Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the show. If we're not our thoughts, who are we? Let's find out. My name's Chris Sutton. This is Mental Conversations.
I'm unsure I can be so absent-minded.
Boom. And we're live. I'm sitting looking at the very happy smiley face of Viv Buckland. Viv, thank you for coming back on the show.
It's a joy and a pleasure, Chris. Always good to talk to you.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if there was a bit of sarcasm in that there.
Never.
So today we're going to talk about one of our favourite subjects, which is you are not your thoughts. And we've talked about this a fair bit. And I think it links in actually with a podcast that we did actually nearly a couple of years ago around where's the unconscious mind. We did a podcast.
Oh, yes, that was a very early one.
And I even wrote it down. If people want to check it out, you can go onto Spotify or iTunes and look at episode 56. So it's a long time ago. This is like nearly 200 now. So I'll delve into it in a little bit about why this is one of the kind of 8 things that's helped me the most on my mental health journey. But can you talk to us a little bit? I really want to get your perspective on why are we not our thoughts?
Oh, right. That's going to take the entire podcast. But in essence, a thought is nothing more than an electrochemical impulse, right? It's just a thing that happened in the brain. And yet we get hung up on them. And so the conversation I often have with people is, was the thought helpful? If it was, great, continue with it. Hang on to it because it was a useful thought. If it wasn't helpful, what stops you letting it go? Because our thoughts are only a perception of reality, right? So this is the world comes at you at 2 million bits of information every second. So it's massive. And the unconscious mind has unlimited capacity. So it receives all of that information through the 5 senses. The trouble is the rational mind, the conscious mind, can't deal with that. Conscious mind, its function is much more around rational thought. So because it's a processing part of you, it deals with only a small amount of information at once. So it deals with around about 137 bits rather than 2 million bits. So the unconscious mind filters everything that's happening, and it gives the conscious mind the bit it can cope with to work on. The trouble is, how does the unconscious mind choose what to give the conscious mind back? Because the conscious mind thinks that what it's working on is reality, and in fact it's working on a tiny snippet of it. And so your thoughts, the things that are happening in your conscious mind, the ones that you're aware of, they're a tiny fraction of what's actually going on. They're just the bit that you notice because your unconscious mind felt that they were the important bits at the time. So if you think that you're a lucky person, you'll notice things that seem to be lucky. You'll notice the coin on the street that you can pick up, or you'll notice how things are going well for you. Because your unconscious mind is going, oh, I'm a lucky person, I best look out for things that are lucky. Whereas if you think you're an unlucky person, your unconscious mind goes, oh, I better look out for those things because that's important. And then you find all the evidence that goes with being unlucky. But that's because neither one of those things are true. It's just that of 2 million bits of information every second, the bit you're aware of is a tiny fraction of it. And that's why there's a set of choices around which thoughts you hang on to and which ones you don't.
Yeah, and this is the interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. And it kind of spins your mind out a little bit when you first start thinking about this, because that in itself feels like some kind of weird paradox that you're thinking about those thoughts and that process. So you're like, well, hang on, are these thoughts that I'm having? And you could go on forever, kind of trying to get your head around it. But one of the things that first freaked me out when I first started having these conversations with people was someone saying to me, well, who do you think you is, not who do you think you are? And they were like, are you your name? And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm more than that. They were like, are you your body? And I was thinking, yeah, but not that. And then I remember someone saying to me, what about your mind? What about your thoughts? May even have been you, Viv. And I was like, nailed it. Yeah, that's who I am, because that's the real me. I'm having these thoughts, and I'm, at the time I was thinking, I'm in control of this bit. This is the, and then it was like you just said, that's kind of like, yeah, I don't choose to think I don't consciously choose to have the thoughts that I think. And that made me think, well, who does? Where's that coming from? And
so it's coming up from your unconscious mind, which is it's kind of like got the age of a 6-year-old. It's not that it's not a bright and intelligent thing. It is. It's just, it's not rational. So we think we're rational human beings, and of course we're just not. We're just a sum of our parts. So when I think about, well, if you're not your thoughts, who are you? At your deepest identity level, you have a set of sort of personality traits. For example, you might be introvert or extrovert, or you'll be somewhere on that spectrum of introvert to extrovert. And those things about you tend not to change. They tend to be who you are. And those things and your values, the things that you hold as being really important to you, like your moral code, those things really inform what your unconscious mind is on the lookout for. And then we've got beliefs. I know we've talked about beliefs before. You know, I'm a little bit passionate about beliefs, but beliefs are just come back to it, are on-off switches. If you believe you can, you could. If you believe you can't, you never will. So your thoughts, the things that you notice and that occur to you, are connected to those really deep-rooted things which are not in your consciousness. They're not there all the time. They're something that just rise to the surface at the time that you're articulating thoughts, or when your self-talk is going on. So you're much, much more than your thoughts, and you can catch yourself out with thoughts and go, okay, was it useful?
Yeah.
No, it probably wasn't useful. I wonder what I could think instead of that. And then you realize there are other options than just the thoughts that you had.
And that's the trick, isn't it? That's what you might have noticed me just looking down. I was thinking, I've written a few notes, not very many, but one of them was that. And it's like, well, yeah, how do you begin to think differently? And we've said this on numerous podcasts we've recorded, but the first thing is about noticing, isn't it? It's about realizing, oh, hang on, I'm in this place where I'm thinking, something negative, or I'm believing that I can't do that, and actually that's not helpful. If it's something that you're going to have to do, whether it's go to the shops and and you have a fear of going outside, or if it's I was talking to you earlier on about chairing a meeting that I was finding intimidating beforehand, and then it's gonna happen. Unless I call in sick and just try and avoid it altogether, I'm gonna have to go through it. So what is I've got going on a bear hunt in my head now, because you have to go through it. Can't go over it, can't go under it. We have to go through it. The meeting was going to happen. So actually my thought process leading up to it was kind of irrelevant in terms of the event happening, but massively relevant in terms of my experience of the time leading up to it, and then how I performed during that meeting.
Yeah. So that's that worry button that people have, that general anxiety about the future, is all your imagination at play, because the future hasn't yet happened. It's all still to exist, and of course, your unconscious mind takes everything personally. So, as your imagination is working through all of the things that there are to worry about that event tomorrow, it comes at it entirely from your perspective. It misses out the fact that anybody else that's taking part in that event also has a perspective. They may share those worries. They may have entirely different worries. And that's right, because we're all unique and we're all different about the way that we approach it. However, it's an event in the future that has not happened yet. And so all you're doing is making a set of assumptions based on memories, past decisions, beliefs, values, personality traits, all of those things that are part of your past, you then project forward in some way to be the future. And of course, what happens is if you project forward strongly enough, the negative aspects of those, then they are much more likely to come true because you've already decided it. One of the interesting things about the unconscious mind is it doesn't know the difference between reality and fiction. So if you dream a nightmare, your unconscious mind doesn't know that those negative things aren't really real. It's only your rational mind, your conscious mind, that knows that. You know, it's like when you're watching Bambi or Watership Down or Lion King, and you get to the sad bit of the movie and you want to cry and you feel all emotional, you feel it welling up. Your unconscious mind is wrapped up in the story. So it thinks that what's going on is a very sad event. And so it generates the set of emotions that go with that. And then your conscious mind steps in and goes, hang on, fella, it's just a film. It's only a story. Get over yourself. Because the conscious mind knows the difference between fiction and reality. So when you're letting your unconscious run riot with this set of thoughts, that's all it's doing.
Can I ask you a question then? Because this is
what's
fascinating to me is I'm going to do it anyway.
Go on.
What's fascinating to me is so with this meeting, I think this is something that's relatively common in people, is that when you're going to a gathering, whether it's an official meeting or something else, you can have this like anxiety of what's going to happen when you get there, and like you say, it's this generalized anxiety about a future event that hasn't happened yet. But I don't have like loads and loads. I've been to thousands of meetings in my time, and I don't have even a handful of really negative experiences of what's happened once I've got to a meeting. And yet I still have this fear in advance, like something bad's going to happen. And it trips me up.
So you're running a habit, right? So your habit, your default setting is there's something coming up. I better worry about it, because that's what I do. I worry about stuff. So I better worry about it because you never know what might go wrong. So all that's happening is you're triggering a habit, and it's a one that's run for a long time. And so you don't stop it. You don't intervene in it, because that's where the trick of noticing your thoughts comes in. Noticing and accepting go together, because otherwise you notice and then judge about it being right or wrong. And actually the thing to do is to accept it. The trick is to notice that's what you're doing and go, oh, hang on. Yeah, that's that habit I run. Now then, if I'm going to imagine what's going to happen in this meeting, I wonder what else I could imagine instead. I wonder if I could imagine it with everybody using a cartoon voice. Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse in the meeting. Darth Vader in the meeting. I wonder if I could imagine it with everybody in fancy dress.
Yeah.
Because all of those things take the fearful emotion out of it. Because if you can imagine one thing, you can imagine a different thing. And how about if you imagined a different thing? If you imagined something that put a smile on your face? Because actually, the future hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So you don't know what it is. So what stops it being something where everybody shows up in pirate fancy dress?
I mean, that would have made the meeting more interesting, if I'm honest, as well. But I think you're right. It's about interrupting it, isn't it? It's about like interrupt, because what I was thinking before you answered was I was thinking, do you know, my issue is I think one of my beliefs then maybe is that I can't change the way I feel about it. It's like I haven't.
It's not true though, is it?
No, I don't think so. I feel the emotion coming on. I feel the kind of the sensation in my stomach, and then the worry starts in. Then I start being snappy, and I start kind of realizing, oh, this is because it's like sitting there like a weight in my head and in my stomach. And I'm like, oh God, once the meeting's over, I know that I'll be able to like move on, and I'll be in a elated state of mind because it's over. Like the relief will be there. But yeah, I think I get to that point where I think I can't actually change it. But you're right. I think challenging it in a different way and using some of those kind of visualization techniques look at it differently.
In a much lighter way, I can't start the day without a cup of tea. I have to have a cup of tea, otherwise my day is going to be ruined. And however many times I tell myself that that's a thing, it becomes a thing. Not because it's a thing, but because I told myself it was a thing. So thoughts and your self-talk are kind of the same thing, that voice in your head that says stuff to you. And then the irony is you believe it as if it was actually like a true thing, as opposed to your unconscious just going, you need a cup of tea. Like, I don't need a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I don't actually have to do that. But I'm happy to accept this working pattern and habit that goes, that's what you do.
And that thought of, I can't do that, that belief, challenging that belief. Do you want to hear a nice little story?
Oh, yes, please.
My 5-year-old Alfie, right? And my kids have been singing this song in the back of my car. And at the end of this song, it's a Coldplay song. And at the end, it's called Up and Up. And at the end of the song, he sings Never Give Up. And he sings it twice. And my kids he sings it like a cappella at the end of this song. And my kids try to sing melodically. They really try and harmonize. It's quite funny. It's very sweet. Never Give Up. Anyway, I was in the car, just me and Alfie the other day. And he asked me to listen to that song. So I put it on. And at the end, he sings Never Give Up. And he went, "Oh, Daddy, I get it." And I was like, "What's that?" And he said, "Never give up." I was like, what do you think? What's he talking about? He said, "Well, if you can't do something, you should keep trying, because if you give up, you'll never be able to do it. But if you never give up, then maybe you'll be able to do it."
Alfie is.
And I was like, "Wow!" Right? But this just melted my heart. He went, "Yeah, it's like me. I never thought I'd be able to hold scissors, but I can now." I was like, "Oh my God, you're adorable!" Like that was where his mind went. Was, I've always had all this nightmare. Oh no, we're doing scissors today. I can't do it. And he's like, "But I never gave up. And now I'm really good at cutting." That's like, so yeah. His thought process, his now belief in his thought process now when it's time to cut something out is, "Oh yeah, I can do
never
this.
Give up." Yeah.
But it's just a really good kind of mantra that he's, we've kind of put through him through this song, to never give up.
It's a wonderful thing to learn when you're 5, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I need to keep hammering that home. So one of the things, there's a couple of exercises that I wanted to throw your way and see what you think of this. One of them's a funny story, actually, not like me at all. But there's this thing I'd heard about, being the witness of your thoughts. And I've spoken about it in different podcasts previously, but for those who are new to the podcast, that I'll explain it again. And it is about that kind of, like you've said, but just noticing, you're thinking about that at the moment. And there's an exercise you can do where you can close your eyes or sit on your own, or wherever you are, sit on the train, and just look at your thoughts. Just don't engage with them. Just notice what you're thinking about. And as they and the imagery is like you're in a cinema and the thoughts are going past you on the screen, and it's up to you which ones you engage with and which ones you go, nah, not going to engage with that. And just it shows you the power, just by spending a few minutes doing that exercise, of how you can actually release and let go of a thought, even if it comes straight back into your mind, that you can just let it go past the screen, on the screen again. They have it like on a train. Your thoughts are going past on a train. And then, is that something you've experienced before or heard about?
Not described like that. I love it the way it's described like that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. There is that that's about that acceptance. It's about and noticing. You notice they're there, and you go, okay, I pay attention to it. It seems a strange thing to say, and I'm glad that you've described it as witness to your thoughts, because it's remarkably rare that people actually do just notice their thoughts and go, "Oh, that's interesting. And where did that come from?" But better than where did that come from, because people disappear down rabbit holes when they do that, is to notice the thought and just go, "Oh, that's interesting. What do I want to do with that?" And I think that's like the train going by, where you make your selection. As if you'd put all of your thoughts into a vending machine and you could look at them and go, well, I'll have that one, but I don't fancy that one today.
Yeah. But it
Because
just,
we don't, sorry, on.
no, it just, sorry to interrupt, it shows you, and again, it's just reiterating what you said, but like, it just shows you that your thoughts are coming from you, and they're coming from your experiences and from your unconscious mind. But you don't actually have to grab hold of it consciously and run with that, especially if it's negative. You don't actually have to. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. And that's a very powerful thing to actually it's a very powerful thing to realize, but it's an even more powerful thing if you can try and change it or grab hold of the one that's.
So I suppose I'm going to sound a little bit weird now. I'm used to sounding a bit weird, though. I have developed the habit of having a conversation with my unconscious mind, right? Because sometimes it shouts at us in a way because we're not used to listening to it and paying attention to it, and that's why it hurls some abuse at us sometimes. When you're feeling nervous and anxious, and your gut starts to play up because it's trying to give you a message and you're just not listening to it, or where you suddenly find there's a tearful moment and you don't quite know where it's come from. And all that's happening is your unconscious mind has found almost like a gap in your agenda and chucked something at you to get your attention. And I suppose the most common time for me to have a conversation with my unconscious is if I wake up in the night and I start thinking about something that I haven't done or that I need to do. I actually don't turn the light on, and I don't have a notepad and paper by the bed. I know that's a technique a lot of people use, and it's very effective. The alternative version I use is I go, okay, thank you. So my conscious mind steps in and goes, thank you. I accept that you are reminding me. You're reminding me at a time that's not convenient, but I appreciate the fact that you are reminding me. Could you just do that at 9:30 in the morning when it would be really, truly useful? Right. But I do appreciate what you're doing. And then I can go back to sleep. And your unconscious mind is great at it. I mean, its timing sometimes is a bit off, but it is actually quite good at coming back with, oh, you told me to tell you this. It's almost like a petulant child sometimes when we tell it to sit down and be quiet and shut up, which is what we often do with the unconscious mind. We try to repress it, and then it shouts at you and it lashes out. Well, actually, it's much better to just be polite, have a conversation,
I like
and
that.
Go, look, thanks.
Yeah,
I need it at a different time.
I'm going to try that because I spoke to someone called Steve Blower a few weeks ago. I mentioned him to you, and I mentioned you to him because you're both big on into NLP. And he did something where he talked about in the middle of the night. He does something called a stop and breathe technique, where he shouts inside in his own mind. He shouts stop at the top of his voice internally, and then he takes 5 deep breaths, and then he thinks about something like, I wonder how kettles work, or he says he deliberately engages the conscious mind in something else, kind of thing, to try and distract him. So that's one technique, but I like that technique of kind of just having that conversation. It also randomly brought a thought into my mind about.
Is it one that you want to keep? Is it useful to you?
No, not really.
Excellent.
But what it made when you said come back to me at a time that's more useful, it made me think about bin day, right? So when it is when it's bin day, I don't know. My unconscious mind knows on a Monday to tell me to put the bin out.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty complex.
It's important to you, and the unconscious mind has a number of different functions, and one of them is to do stuff like that for you. Is to go, oh, hang on, you need to know this.
But I know I might sound a bit dim now, but like, I just think that's really clever that it can tell me. I mean, it's obviously pretty clever, but that it can tell me, oh, Chris, it's Monday today. There's, you've got to put the bin out.
It's bin day.
And I've got a reminder on my phone, which I've never, like 8 o'clock on a Monday night, it always pings up, and I've always already done it. I've never once gone, oh God, yeah, I need to put the bin out. and yet, with no other reminders around. So that must be the unconscious mind telling you
and it's because
the
it's
right
something that's
time.
important to you.
Mm.
It's important to you. So your unconscious mind's gone, oh, you need this. Right? And this is where the conversation between the conscious and the unconscious makes sense, because it's like an orchestra. The conscious mind is like the conductor, and the unconscious mind is like all of the instruments in the orchestra. They need to take instruction. So if you give your unconscious mind some conscious instructions, then it's quite happy normally to kind of work in partnership. That's what it's after doing. But it's your unconscious mind that regularly throws the random thoughts are really like from the unconscious that go, oh, what about this then? And it's up to you whether you follow that thought or not. You can let it go, or
Yeah.
you can go with it. The choice is yours.
I think there's another exercise with that in mind that I want to talk you through and see what you think of this. Basically, this is just a funny story, and I do apologize to I'm not going to say the person's name, but and I'm not laughing at them. It did tickle me, but it was obviously someone who's having some difficulties. But I went to a mindfulness course. I went on a mindfulness course, and it was a 6-week course. And it was something I was sent on when I was off work with depression. And it was something that they were like, look, it's going to take a while before we can get you to see a talking therapist and blah, blah, blah. But there's this course we can send you on, and it starts next week. There were 6 of us on this course. And one of the people on the course had real anger management issues. And they did this exercise about, similar to what I talked about with the train, but I really love this exercise. So I just want to talk it through to people so that they can actually try this. And what they described was that you close your eyes. I'm not going to do the actual exercise. I'm just going to tell you how to do it. You close your eyes, and to get yourself in the right frame of mind, you visualize that you're walking through this forest. You walk through a field. It's like a meadow, and the temperature's perfect. It's not raining. There's nothing but comfort. There's no discomfort whatsoever. And you walk through, you get to these woods, and it's beautiful and it's nice and cool. And you walk through the woods, and it's crunchy leaves, and you feel great. You feel really positive about yourself. And you get to this stream, and there's a rock there next to this stream with a tree. And you sit on this rock, which is very, very comfortable. And you're completely at comfort and at ease with the world. And you reach up and you pluck a leaf off the tree. And whatever thought comes into your mind, you place it onto the stream. And you just watch it disappear down the stream. And then the next thought you'll notice is another thought comes into your mind, because you never stop having thoughts. And it might be the same thought, it might be a different one, but you pluck it off the tree and you put it on the stream and you let it float down the stream. Now, this is an exercise that I actually do sometimes. If I wake up in the night, I try and then that hopefully sends me off to sleep. But, and again, I'm not laughing at someone, but it was just a funny thing. The teacher said to us afterwards, how did you get on with the exercise? And I was like, do you know what? I really enjoyed that. And I got quite a lot out of that. And then they went around the room, and this guy, they said to this guy, how about you? And he had a really broad Yorkshire accent. And they said, how about you? And he went, oh, it was a nightmare. He said, because I decided to take the dog. He said, so I'm in the meadow and the dog got off the bloody lead. He said, so I spent he said, that was a 5-minute exercise. I spent the first 3 minutes getting the dog back. He said, by the time you said to stop doing the exercise, I was only just in woods. And I was like, oh, wow. But like, what's your take on that?
Oh, thanks for that one. I suppose it's really hard. You can't control your thoughts to a certain extent, so even though that's a guided mindfulness meditation, if you like, that's taking you through, and if you simply listen to the instructions and follow them through, then it's probably very calming and relaxing. But when you've got that sort of mind that's racing around and finds it really difficult, it's not disciplined to follow those simple instructions and keep following them through, then it adds variety to the story. I suppose it's interesting, because as you were describing, I was thinking about hypnosis, which is trying to get the conscious mind to move to one side and keep it busy and keep it entertained with something, while you're really having a conversation with the unconscious mind, which is much more open to just accepting suggestions.
Yeah.
And he sounds like he's got a conscious mind that needs a lot of entertaining.
Yeah, well, my feeling was, I remember thinking at the time, and I've, you know, I know the guy, and he's doing so much better now, you know. But I remember thinking at the time, he's not ready.
No.
I felt he's not ready to.
Yeah, there's no impulse control. There's
You know,
when that thought is there.
It was like it was almost like, how can I get out of this? How can I not actually do it? And I think he was saying it, and it's the reason I was laughing. I think he was saying it for comedic value. You know, he was trying to be funny, but basically using it as a way of not engaging with the exercise. And I was like, that's a real block, isn't it? If you kind of, but it's something that I recognize, where sometimes, you know, I talk about this all the time, about the kind of the different ways to improve your well-being, and about you have to start doing a bit of exercise, or start eating a little bit better, or start. And it was like, if you don't actually,
it's getting that sort of first simple practice out the way. I've talked to a couple of coachees over the last 6 months that have ADHD, and so find it quite hard to manage the impulse that goes with all of these thoughts that are kind of quick fire thoughts that are coming through all the time. And it's interesting because it does take an awful lot of practice. It's not easy for everyone to do it. You have to start somewhere. And so the easiest place to start is by noticing it and going, oh, yeah, I notice that thought.
Yeah.
And not feeling that you have to do anything else with that other than to notice it, and then learn to notice it and accept it, rather than judging whether it was a good or bad thing. And then, you know, it's only after you've got used to noticing them that you can move on to that extent of control that allows you to say, okay, what do I want to do with it now that I've got it? And I think in that guided mindfulness that you're describing, somebody's almost instructing you that there'll be a thought, drop it on the leaf and let it rush down the river, or wherever, the stream. It takes a lot of practice, though. You know, the simple first step is just notice, just accept it's all right to notice. Start noticing the things that pop into your head, and then really start making some choices later.
That's a really good way to finish it. We've explained it. We've probably spun people's brains out. That's great. I'm happy about that. So look, thank you, Viv, for coming back on. I really appreciate it.
Very welcome. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys out there for listening. As always, you can go on to Spotify or iTunes and pick out any episodes of the 197 from the last couple of years. Wanted to give a special shout out to Lucy, who's a really regular listener, and I know she'll be listening. So I hope you're feeling great, Lucy. And the same goes for the rest of you. Another episode's going to be winging its way to you soon. Thanks, everyone.